Ethan never thought a stupid college dare would ruin his life or maybe save it. Either way, nothing feels normal when a stranger with storm-colored eyes smiles at you from inside your own mirror. The candle had already burned low, dripping wax onto the thrift store rug. His roommates were drunk, shouting downstairs, and Ethan should have laughed off the so-called summoning ritual like everyone else did. But curiosity was always his fatal flaw. He had whispered the words written on that scrap of yellowed paper, a joke scavenged from some occult Reddit forum, expecting nothing more than silence. Instead, the mirror rippled like water, and suddenly, there he was, Adrian. The boy inside the glass wasn't some demon with horns or fangs. He looked human, too human, a little older than Ethan, with broad shoulders that strained against the translucent edge of reality. His smile wasn't cruel but knowing, like he'd been waiting for Ethan to say those words for years. And his voice low, calm, dangerously intimate slipped into Ethan's ears as though it belonged there. "You called me?" Adrian murmured, his eyes locked on Ethan's shaking hands. "Now you can't send me back." Ethan should have screamed, should have run. Instead, his knees weakened. The pull wasn't logical, wasn't safe, but it was real. And when Adrian pressed his palm flat against the glass, Ethan found his own hand rising to meet it, skin separated only by that fragile barrier. A shock of warmth traveled up his arm, deep into his chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. Ethan's life had always been built on routines, class schedules, essay deadlines, weekend shifts at the coffee shop. Nothing extraordinary, nothing terrifying. But Adrian shattered that pattern with every stolen glance and whispered secret through the mirror's surface. He wasn't just some haunting mistake. He was a presence, a temptation. "What are you?" Ethan asked one night, his voice breaking from both fear and the thrill of knowing Adrian would answer. "Someone who doesn't belong here," Adrian replied softly. Then he leaned closer, his breath fogging against the glass as if he were standing in the same room. "But you wanted me, didn't you?" Ethan hated how true that felt, how deep the wanting went. Days blurred. Adrian became a constant shadow in Ethan's dorm room, waiting whenever he glanced at the mirror. Sometimes he teased, mocking Ethan's nervousness. Sometimes he was gentle, listening to Ethan ramble about his classes, his friends, the life Adrian could never touch. And sometimes on nights when the loneliness clawed too deeply, Adrian looked at him with such aching tenderness that Ethan thought his chest would split open from the weight of it. But desire came with consequences. Ethan's friends started to notice his distraction, his tired eyes, the way he avoided parties. His best friend, Lucas, cornered him after class, worry written all over his face. "Dude, you're not okay," Lucas said. "You look haunted." Ethan almost laughed. If only Lucas knew how literal that was. And then came the nightmares. Dreams where Adrian wasn't kind, wasn't gentle. Dreams where his hands pushed through the glass and dragged Ethan in, where the world dissolved into shards of silver and blood. Yet even after waking in a cold sweat, Ethan found himself yearning for Adrian's touch again. What terrified him most wasn't that Adrian might be dangerous, it was that Ethan didn't care. The turning point came on a rainy evening in October, when lightning split the sky and the mirror flickered with unnatural light. Adrian's voice was sharper that night, almost desperate. "You can't keep me trapped forever," he said, pounding once against the glass. "The longer I stay, the more the barrier weakens. You'll have to choose." "Choose what?" Ethan whispered. Adrian's expression softened, but the intensity in his eyes didn't. "Me, or the world you think you can live in without me." It was madness, utter madness, and yet Ethan's heart betrayed him with its answer. Because somewhere between fear and fascination, Adrian had become more than a haunting. He had become a need, and Ethan, God help him, was already falling. That was only the beginning. The nights grew darker, the pull between them stronger. Each conversation was a thread tying Ethan tighter, each stolen smile a blade slicing away his resistance. Adrian wasn't supposed to exist, and yet Ethan couldn't imagine life without him. But the mirror wasn't infinite. Cracks began to spread across its surface, hairline fractures glowing faintly whenever Adrian pressed too close. The ritual had been wrong, incomplete. Ethan knew it. Adrian knew it. And with every passing day, the risk of losing losing himself grew unbearable. Still, when Adrian whispered, "You're mine," Ethan didn't protest, because he wanted it to be true, even if it cost him everything. The storm rattled the windows, thunder rolling across campus like an angry warning from the sky. Ethan sat frozen on his bed, the glow of the fractured mirror throwing strange shadows across the walls. Adrian was closer than ever, his breath misting against the glass. His hands pressed flat as though sheer force of will could break the barrier. "You're unraveling?" Ethan whispered, his voice almost drowned by the rain. This isn't safe." Adrian's answering smile was crooked, almost human, almost boyish, but his eyes carried the weight of something Ethan couldn't comprehend. "Safe was never part of the deal. You called me Ethan. You called me because you wanted more than what your world was giving you." The words cut sharper than the crack splintering across the mirror. Ethan wanted to argue, to deny, but the truth was lodged in his chest. He had wanted more. More than late nights studying, more than shallow hookups that left him empty, more than pretending to be fine when loneliness gnawed at his insides. Adrian wasn't just a haunting. He was a reflection of everything Ethan had been too scared to reach for. And maybe that was why Ethan couldn't look away now, even as danger crept closer with every heartbeat. Lucas's worry turned into suspicion. "You've been shutting me out," Lucas said one afternoon as they huddled under an umbrella outside the coffee shop where Ethan worked. The air smelled of espresso and wet pavement. Lucas's gaze was steady, concerned but sharp in a way Ethan wasn't used to. "If you're in trouble, you can tell me." "I'm fine," Ethan lied, his throat dry. Lucas didn't believe him. "You're not sleeping. You jump at shadows. And when you think no one's looking, you stare into empty space like you're—" He stopped, as though realizing the words sounded crazy. "Like you're seeing someone who isn't there." Ethan forced a laugh brittle as glass. "You're imagining things. I've just got exams. That's all." But that night, back in his dorm, Adrian's laugh echoed through the mirror when Ethan repeated the conversation. "He's not wrong," Adrian teased, tilting his head. "You are haunted. By me." Ethan should have shoved the mirror under a blanket, should have shut out that voice, but instead he leaned closer, his pulse quickening. "You like that?" Adrian's expression softened. "I like that you can't hide it. Not from me." And Ethan hated how much he liked it too. The following weeks blurred into a dangerous routine. Ethan woke, went to class, forced conversations with friends, then rushed back to his room as though tethered to the mirror. Adrian was always waiting. Sometimes his presence was playful, singing off-key to songs Ethan played on his laptop, mocking his clumsy cooking attempts. Other times it was heavier, intimate. Adrian asked questions no one else did. "What scares you the most? What do you dream of when you let yourself? Do you ever wonder if love could be worth losing everything?" Ethan's answers were raw, unfiltered. With Adrian, the walls he built for the world outside collapsed. And every time Adrian smiled in response, soft, approving, like Ethan had given him a piece of his soul, Ethan felt something dangerous bloom deeper. But the mirror was changing. The cracks grew larger, glowing faintly at night like embers under glass. Once, Ethan reached to adjust a fallen book, and his knuckle brushed the mirror's edge. A searing pain shot through his skin, leaving a thin red line that burned long after. "Careful," Adrian whispered sharply, more alarmed than Ethan had ever seen him. "It's fragile now. Too fragile." "What happens when it breaks?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. Adrian didn't answer. He only looked at Ethan with something close to sorrow. The first time Adrian touched him, really touched him, Ethan nearly collapsed. It was late. The dorm was silent, the world outside drowned in fog. Adrian pressed his hand against the mirror, the fractures glowing beneath his palm. Ethan mirrored the motion, their hands aligned. And then, without warning, the glass gave way. A hand, warm and solid, broke through the barrier, gripping Ethan's wrist. His breath hitched. It was impossible. It was terrifying. It was everything he had secretly longed for. Adrian's touch wasn't ghostly. It wasn't cold. It was real, so real it burned. "You see," Adrian whispered, his thumb brushing against Ethan's skin. "We're not so different. You and I, we were always meant to touch." Ethan's heart pounded. He should have screamed, should have pulled away. But instead, he curled his fingers into Adrian's, holding tight as though afraid the moment would vanish. And for the first time in weeks, the loneliness disappeared. But the cost revealed itself quickly. The next morning, Ethan woke to find his reflection altered. His eyes were rimmed darker, shadows etched deeper into his face. For a fleeting second, when he blinked at the mirror, Adrian's smile flickered in his place. Panic clawed at Ethan's throat. He stumbled back, shaking his head. No, this isn't me." Adrian's voice slipped through the crackling glass, gentle but insistent. "It's the bond. Every touch pulls me closer. Every moment ties us tighter." "You're taking me with you," Ethan whispered. Adrian didn't deny it. "I told you you'd have to choose." The days that followed were chaos. Lucas pressed harder, showing up unannounced, demanding answers Ethan couldn't give. Professors sent emails about missed assignments. Ethan's co-workers at the cafe whispered about his vacant stares. The world around him began to unravel as though mirroring the fractures in the glass. And still, Ethan returned to Adrian. Still, he let himself be touched, held, pulled deeper into something that promised both salvation and destruction. One night, when the moon hung heavy and full, Adrian's hand pressed against the barrier again. Ethan didn't hesitate this time. He let Adrian pull him closer, their faces nearly touching, the glass the only thing left between them. "I want you," Adrian confessed, voice breaking. "Not just like this, not just through glass. I want to be real for you." Ethan's heart clenched. "And what if being real destroys everything?" Adrian's gaze burned into him. "Then let it. Because without you, I'm nothing." It should have been enough to frighten Ethan into running, into smashing the mirror and ending it all. But instead he felt tears sting his eyes. Because he knew. He knew what it was like to feel like nothing without someone else. He knew the hunger, the ache, the desperation for a love that made existence bearable. And maybe that was why, despite the risk, despite the terror, Ethan whispered the words that sealed his fate. "Then take me with you." The mirror flared with light, the cracks blazing like fire. Adrian's arms pushed further through, wrapping around Ethan in a desperate, trembling embrace. For the first time, Ethan felt the full weight of him, warm, solid, alive. The room shook, the glass screamed, and Ethan held on, even as the world threatened to shatter around them. The mirror screamed like breaking ice. Ethan clung to Adrian's shoulders, nails digging into warm flesh that shouldn't have been real, shouldn't have been possible. The air vibrated with static, the storm outside howling as though the sky itself rebelled against what they were doing. "Don't let go," Adrian whispered, voice raw with both need and terror. Ethan couldn't. He wouldn't. The emptiness he had carried for so long was gone, replaced by the weight of Adrian's body pressed against him, the scent of rain and something faintly electric clinging to his skin. For the first time, Ethan wasn't alone. But the mirror didn't approve. The fractures widened, light pouring through like molten veins. Shards rattled to the floor, sizzling as if they carried fire. Ethan gasped when one grazed his arm, burning into his skin like a brand. Adrian swore, pulling him tighter. "It's too soon. The barrier—" "I don't care." Ethan cut him off, breathless. "I can't lose you." Adrian's eyes softened with something Ethan had never seen before: fear, yes, but also awe. Like Ethan's stubbornness meant more to him than survival. And then, with a shudder that shook the entire dorm, the glass sealed shut again. Adrian was ripped back inside, his arms torn from Ethan's grasp. The room plunged into silence, save for Ethan's ragged sobs. The mirror was whole again, but Adrian's handprint lingered, faintly glowing on the surface. For the next 3 days, Adrian didn't appear. Ethan spiraled. He went to class in body only, his mind trapped in that room, staring at the lifeless mirror. Lucas showed up twice, pounding on the door, demanding to know what was going on. Ethan ignored him both times, too afraid of what might spill from his lips if he opened them. On the fourth night, Adrian returned. His face appeared slowly, like fog condensing on glass. He looked weaker. Shadows hollowed his cheeks, his golden hair dull. "You shouldn't have touched me like that," Adrian murmured. "It takes too much from you. And from me." "I don't care what it takes," Ethan said fiercely. "You disappeared. Do you know what that did to me?" Adrian's smile was broken, but beautiful. "You're addicted already." Ethan wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in his throat. Because it was true. Whatever Adrian was, ghost, spirit, mistake, Ethan couldn't imagine going back to a life without him. "You promised me a choice," Ethan said. "So give it to me. Tell me what this really is." Adrian's expression darkened. He looked down as if ashamed. "I wasn't supposed to stay. The ritual you read it wasn't complete. Half of me is bound here. Half of me isn't. That's why I can't cross over fully. Not yet." Ethan swallowed hard. "Then what happens if the mirror breaks completely?" Adrian's gaze snapped up, stormy and intense. "Either I'll be free, or I'll drag you in with me." The words chilled Ethan more than the storm outside ever could. The days grew heavier after that confession. Ethan tried to focus on school, on Lucas, on anything that tethered him to normal life. But the mirror was always there, watching, waiting. Adrian tried to keep things light, telling stories about the fragments of memory he still held, teasing Ethan about his messy hair, coaxing out smiles when the weight became too much. Yet underneath, both of them knew the truth. Time was running out, and the bond between them was tightening like a noose. One night, after a long silence, Adrian asked, "Do you regret it? Calling me?" Ethan shook his head instantly. "Never. Even if it destroys you?" Ethan stepped closer to the glass, close enough that his breath fogged against Adrian's cheek through the barrier. "Especially then. Because for once, I feel like I matter to someone. Like I'm not just existing." Adrian's hand rose, pressing to the glass. Ethan mirrored it. Heat surged between them, almost unbearable. "You matter," Adrian said, voice breaking. "You matter more than anything." And for a moment, Ethan believed love could rewrite the laws of reality. But love wasn't enough to hide the truth from Lucas. It happened on a Sunday evening. Ethan had forgotten to lock the door, too consumed by Adrian's return. They were whispering fiercely, Ethan insisting he could handle the risk, Adrian begging him to let go. Lucas walked in. "Ethan?" Ethan spun around, his stomach dropping. Lucas stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes flicking from Ethan's desperate face to the glowing mirror. "What the hell?" Lucas's voice trailed off, disbelief warring with terror. The mirror flared, reacting to the intrusion. Adrian's form blurred, his outline unstable. His voice thundered through the room, deeper than usual. "He shouldn't be here." "Lucas, wait!" Ethan shouted, reaching out, but his friend was already backing away. "No, man, this is insane. You've lost it. You're talking to yourself." He stopped, choking on the sight of Adrian's arm slipping through the crackling glass. Lucas bolted. "Lucas!" Ethan cried, but the door slammed shut. Silence followed, heavy and damning. Ethan turned back to Adrian, panic tearing at him. "He saw you. He saw everything." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Then it's too late. He won't understand. He'll try to stop you." Ethan shook his head violently. "No, he's my best friend. He won't." Adrian's voice hardened. "He'll destroy the mirror. And me." Ethan's chest clenched. He knew Adrian was right. He knew Lucas, protective to a fault, would do anything to save him. Even if it meant tearing away the only thing Ethan had left to hold on to. And for the first time, Ethan realized to keep Adrian, he might have to lose everything else. The next day, Lucas didn't come to class. He didn't answer texts or calls. Ethan spent the afternoon spiraling, pacing, dreading. And when he finally returned to his dorm, he froze. The mirror was gone. The wall where it had hung was bare, the faint outline of dust the only sign it had ever been there. Ethan's heart stopped. He dropped his bag, frantically searching the room, tearing through closets, under the bed. Nothing. "Adrian?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Adrian!" Silence answered. Ethan collapsed to his knees, his chest caving in. His best friend had stolen his only love, his anchor, his addiction. And for the first time, Ethan realized just how far he was willing to go to get Adrian back. The attic smelled of dust and old wood, the air so heavy Ethan could barely breathe. His chest burned as he stumbled up the steps, heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards. He'd known, even before Lucas stopped answering, even before the mirror vanished from his dorm, that this was where he'd find him. And there it was. The mirror leaned crooked against the far wall, glowing faintly in the dark, its fractured veins pulsing like a heartbeat. Adrian's outline flickered in the glass, his features twisted with panic. "Ethan," Adrian whispered the moment their eyes met. "You came." Lucas stood between them, crowbar gripped tight, his face pale with determination. "Stay back. I'm ending this before it eats you alive." "Lucas, don't," Ethan cried, rushing forward. His friend flinched, raising the crowbar like a shield. "Open your eyes, man," Lucas shouted. "Look at you. You don't eat, you don't sleep, you're not even yourself anymore. This thing," he jabbed the metal toward the mirror, "is killing you." Ethan's hands shook. "No, he's not a thing. He's Adrian. He's real." "He's not real." Lucas's voice cracked, fury barely covering the tremor of fear. "He's a trick, some parasite feeding on you. And if I have to be the bad guy to save you, then fine." The crowbar lifted. "Lucas, please," Ethan begged, tears burning his eyes. "I can't lose him." Adrian pressed his palms flat against the glass, his voice raw. "Ethan, don't let him." The sound of steel against glass rang out, sharp and final. But the mirror didn't break. Instead, the cracks blazed with violent light, throwing both boys backward. Lucas hit the floor hard, dropping the crowbar. Ethan scrambled to his knees, staring in horror as the mirror pulsed brighter and brighter, Adrian's form twisting, struggling against the barrier. "You've made it unstable," Adrian shouted, his voice shaking the rafters. "If it shatters now, Ethan will be dragged in with me." Lucas groaned, clutching his head. "Then all the more reason." He reached for the crowbar again. Ethan lunged, grabbing it first, yanking it out of reach. His chest heaved, torn between the boy he'd trusted since childhood and the boy who had somehow become his entire heart. "Stop!" Ethan screamed, his voice breaking. "Just stop. You don't get it, neither of you do. This isn't about being safe or sane or right. It's about," he choked, shaking. "It's about love. And I love him." The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas's expression crumbled, disbelief and betrayal flickering across his face. "Ethan," his voice cracked, softer now. "You can't mean that." But Ethan did. He knew it in every fiber of his being, in every tear burning his eyes. He turned back to Adrian, whose face was wet with his own tears, pressed desperately against the glass. "I love you," Ethan whispered. "Even if it kills me, I choose you." The mirror exploded. Shards rained like falling stars, slicing the air, embedding into the wooden beams. Light engulfed the attic, searing and white, swallowing Ethan whole. He felt himself lifted, dragged, consumed by a force bigger than him, stronger than anything. And then arms pulling him close, solid, warm, trembling with the same terror and longing coursing through Ethan's veins. Adrian. No glass between them, no barrier, just skin, flesh, heartbeats crashing together. "I've got you," Adrian whispered into his hair, his voice hoarse with relief. "You're mine. You chose me." Ethan buried his face against Adrian's chest, sobbing. "Don't let go. Never." The light faded, the attic settling into stillness. The mirror was gone, only splinters left in its place. And standing in the middle of it all was Adrian, whole, real, alive. Lucas stared from across the room, frozen. His lips parted as though to speak, but no words came. Ethan pulled back just enough to look at him, his heart twisting. I'm sorry. I can't explain this. But I need you to trust me. Adrian isn't my destruction. She's my salvation. For a long moment, Lucas said nothing. Then he lowered his gaze, shoulders heavy. If you're wrong, if he hurts you. He won't, Ethan said, voice steady for the first time in weeks. He glanced up at Adrian, whose eyes shone with a tenderness that left no room for doubt. Because he loves me too. Adrian cupped his face, his thumb brushing Ethan's cheek. More than anything, the weeks that followed were a blur of adjustment. Adrian had no identification, no past to explain, no story that made sense in the daylight. But Ethan didn't care. He helped him, guided him, found ways to slip Adrian into his world. They learned the rhythm of mornings together, of small things, coffee, laughter, silence that felt safe. Lucas kept his distance at first, but slowly, painfully, he began to accept what he couldn't understand. And though the friendship between him and Ethan would never be the same, there was a fragile truce. Some nights, when Ethan lay tangled in Adrian's arms, he still feared it was all a dream, that he'd wake to an empty mirror and realize he'd imagined it all. But every time he whispered that fear aloud, Adrian kissed it away. You're not dreaming, Adrian would murmur against his lips. I'm here, I'm real, and I'm not going anywhere. And Ethan would believe him, because love had already defied the impossible. Months later, on a quiet evening when the world outside buzzed with the hum of normalcy, Ethan stood in front of where the mirror had once hung. The wall was bare now, save for the faint outline of dust. He reached for Adrian's hand, twining their fingers together. Do you ever miss it? Ethan asked softly. Adrian tilted his head. The mirror. Yeah, it was where I first saw you. Where you first saw me. Adrian's smile was gentle, his eyes alight with something deeper than memory. I don't need a mirror anymore. You're all I see. Ethan's chest tightened, tears threatening again. He leaned in, pressing their foreheads together. For so long, I thought love was something out of reach, something other people got to have. But you, his voice broke. You proved me wrong. Adrian kissed him softly, tenderly, sealing the words between them. You called me, Adrian whispered, and I'll spend forever answering. Ethan smiled through his tears, pulling him closer. For once, there were no storms, no shattering glass, no impossible choices. Just two boys in love, holding on like the world had finally, mercifully, chosen them back. And it was enough. It was everything. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.